Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into my official top 10 best bets for college football week 3 number edition, where I go over my best bets and then also take a look at some bonus games. Last week, I think I went 3-3-4 or something like that. I don't know. I lost track. I had a lot of ties and things like that. Either way, taking a look at the first one, number 10, this Ohio State-Western Kentucky game, it feels like a lock to take Western Kentucky now plus 28, but also it feels like a lock to take the over 64. So Ohio State in their first two games, they've gone way under, but it has been frustrating for the Buckeyes because both Indiana and Youngstown State have deployed a strategy where it felt like they were just trying to run the clock out and lose by as little as possible. I can promise you Western Kentucky is not going to do that, and it's the same thing every year with this Buckeyes defense. They look so good against horrible opponents, and then they face someone that has a pulse, and you're going to see Austin Reed probably throw for 350 on them. I do have this as a relatively close game, but still, I expect Ohio State to be challenged, maybe even go down early. Kyle McCord will play this full game. He will throw for a ton of yards against a bad Western Kentucky defense. They will have to go try hard into the second half, and that will cause this game to go easily over the 64. Again, the Buckeyes 0-2, for the over. Both of their games have gone under. That is very uncharacteristic. I think it corrects itself because Western Kentucky is going to try and win this game. They're going to be playing up. They're going to be quick. They're going to try and get to an early lead. The Buckeyes will respond because Western Kentucky has a horrible defense. I like Western Kentucky plus the 28, but even if something happens where Ohio State blows them out early, if you have the over 64, that gives you the coverage to where the Buckeyes, let's say they drop their first 50 burger, you would expect that game to go over 64 because Western Kentucky still has a good offense. They're going to score at least 14 points, you would think. Moving on to number 9, it is Clemson at home versus FAU. I love this spot for Clemson. So really, it's a weird spread, 24.5. And the reason it's so weird is because nobody really knows what to do with Clemson. Last week, Clemson absolutely decapitated the FCS team that they played. Everyone was like, oh, they're losing. Go look at the total yardage. It was like 740 total yards. It was crazy. I still believe in Clemson. Clemson is going to destroy Florida Atlantic. If you guys don't know about Florida Atlantic this year, they are terrible. Clemson should be about minus 35 in this game. I still like Will Shipley, Cade Klubnik. Clemson, for as bad as you can say Dabo is with the transfer portal, he still has brought in elite defensive talent in recruiting. I've got this at 42-7. It could be 49-7. It could be 52-7. This is going to be a mauling. It is an 8 o'clock game, so kind of a weird start time, but overall, Clemson very easily covering the 24-point spread there. Next at number 8, you've got Alabama at South Florida. So this is essentially a neutral site game. You could even say it's slightly pro-Alabama. The only thing I would be worried about, we might be dealing with a lightning delay in this game. Remember, this game is taking place in Tampa, Florida. This time of year, it is brutal when it comes to the lightning and the thunderstorms they're getting. So who knows if that happens, but this is just such a quintessential Saban bounce back against a horrible team. 54-10, it could be 61-10, 60, to whatever. South Florida has a horrifically bad defense. They are going to have no home field advantage. It is kind of a weird game. It's 3:30 on ABC, the non-conference game, but I will take Alabama. I would say very likely to drop a 50 burger. Jalen Milroe, he's going through his lumps right now, but Bama, it's not like they're out of the playoff picture or anything like that. They've got everything in front of them. They haven't lost a conference game, and they'll win this game very easily. Probably also get a defensive touchdown. 32 is a tough ask, but realistically, they should be able to cover it. It's a Saban bounce back. Moving on to number 7, it is LSU at Mississippi State. So this is a 11 a.m. Central start time, I want to say. Or are they East Coast? I don't know. But Mississippi State, to me, it's just too big of a number. Certainly, I understand LSU tends to blow out like middling SEC teams, and that's what really props them up. They did it a few times last year. But in this spot, again, I just think 10 points at home for Mississippi State, it's too big of a number. I have to take the value play here on them, plus the 10, with a veteran leader quarterback against an LSU team who is very veteran themselves. I do think it's going to be relatively close. I've got LSU winning, but 10 points is just too much to pass up on. You got to take the value there. At number 6, it is Kansas State at Missouri, so I'm going in on Missouri there, plus the 5. Listen, Missouri has not been good their first 2 games, but it's not like Kansas State is this crazy talented team. I am not buying Kansas State this year. 5 points. I mean, think about it. Missouri could lose by a field goal at home and still cover this spread. But there's a lot of hype around this Missouri program. They've gotten some big recruits. They've got a 5-star receiver right now on the team, Luther Burden. I think he's going to have a big game in this one. Missouri ends up coming out with a ranked win, and kind of this will be one of the bigger upsets of the day, I do predict. At number 5, it is Northern Illinois traveling to Nebraska. So, yeah, I'm going in on Nebraska minus the 11 in this one. Northern Illinois is horrible. They can't score. I know people are going to say, well, you know, they beat Boston College in week 1, but then they lost to, like, the University of Maine in week 2. You know, I mean, you're losing to FCS teams. Nebraska seems to do this. I want to say it was last year or the year before last year. They throttled both Northwestern and Akron, and I think this is another situation. I still like Matt Rule. I understand they're 0-2. It's a really bad start. But overall, Nebraska minus the 11, I love it. Although the issue is Nebraska seems to play close games. There have been games, a few games in the past 2 years where they've absolutely blown out their opponent. I think that happens again against a really bad Northern Illinois team. The number 4 bet is Syracuse at Purdue. Yeah, so this is pretty crazy to me, you know, and what's going on right now with Syracuse and their analytics is really remarkable, where they've blown out 2 teams. One of them, Colgate and FCS, the other team in the MAC, and their analytics have just completely overinflated how good they actually are. Purdue sitting plus 2.5. Yes, please. Purdue's winning this game outright. I like Purdue a lot. I said they would win outright last week when they were on the road at Virginia Tech. Week 1, you lose to Fresno State at home. That's all right. Fresno State's a good team. It is what it is. But Purdue, 7:30 NBC game, raucous environment against a Syracuse team that they're more talented than. And Syracuse is being propped up because they beat MAC schools and FCS schools. This is just so easy, folks. Purdue's going to win this game outright. I'll take them plus the 2.5 there. At number 3, oh my goodness. At some point, North Texas is going to have to help me out. They've had a disaster start. They're 0-2. Guys, that means they're due for a win. Plus 4.5. The analytics say they should win this game outright. And I think North Texas finally wins a game. La Tech is horrible this year. I've got them winning barely in a higher scoring game. But North Texas plus the 4.5. They're due. This is a value play. Moving on to number 2, it's Virginia Tech at Rutgers. So let's pump the brakes a little bit on Rutgers here. This is an aggressive line. By the way, I think this game is at 7 o'clock, not 4 o'clock. I forgot to change that. But Virginia Tech plus the 6.5, just based off of value. Again, we can understand Rutgers has had a nice little start. They crushed Temple, they beat Northwestern, and then, I mean, good for them because Northwestern comes back and beats UTEP, so it's not like Northwestern is horrifically bad. But if you're going to give me Virginia Tech plus the 6.5, this game really should be Virginia Tech plus 3. I'll say maybe Rutgers wins on a walk-off field goal, but plus 6.5. Virginia Tech really didn't perform that bad against Purdue. I expected them to lose at home, and they actually put up a fight. They've got an okay offense. I think they score enough in this game, even though they are on the road, to keep it close and cover the 6.5. And then number 1, I think you just have to keep riding Colorado. It's clear the analytics and the models have not adjusted fast enough to Colorado. Certainly Colorado is going to be a great fade attempt later in the season, but Colorado State, this game's at 10 o'clock at night on ESPN. You know, Heisman numbers are going to be put up. Travis Hunter, Sanders, they're both going to have huge numbers. They're sitting minus 23.5. Colorado State might be a little bit better than they were last year, because I know last year they were just horrific. But I'll say this game is a complete blowout, 52-18, with Colorado easily covering the 23.5. It's just not a big enough number. They haven't caught up to it. You know, if Colorado was like minus 28, I think that would be a lot more of an accurate spread for this game. But either way, and then we do have a few bonus picks that I just decide to throw in here. The first one, Oregon minus 37.5 versus Hawaii. So it's tough going in on a team minus 37.5. But the thought here is Oregon, they tend to run up the score against teams, and they might, if they score 60, you would have to think they easily cover in this game. At minimum, I think they score into the 50s, and Hawaii, we know, they're just not a good team. Florida plus 6.5 versus Tennessee, so this could have been included into my top 10 best bets, because I do think Florida wins this game outright, just based off the fact that Tennessee, to me, is a team with Joe Milton. It feels like they're going to end up going to that true freshman, Nico Laman-Leva. That's what it feels like with Tennessee, and they're going to use this as kind of a rebuilding year and getting him reps, especially if they lose this game to Florida. I mean, I'm not trusting Florida that much, but if you take a look at the comparison, Florida against an FCS team last week, they crush them. Tennessee, they struggle. I know you could say, well, Florida lost to Utah. I mean, that's a tough game on the road week 1, traveling cross country. I'll take Florida in the swamp in a good environment plus the 6.5. Charlotte plus the 7.5 versus Georgia State. So Charlotte put up a really good fight last week against Maryland, and this is great value. Charlotte might win that game outright plus the 7.5. San Diego State plus 24.5 at Oregon State. Probably the only one in the world talking about San Diego State covering this spread, because everyone loves Oregon State right now. It's just good value. I mean, Oregon State to me might be getting propped up a little bit too much, so I'll take the value in San Diego State. Louisville minus 10 versus Indiana. I just think Indiana's horrible, honestly. I mean, I guess we'll see, but I'll take a Louisville minus 10. But guys, that is going to do it for my top 10 college football best bets of week number 3. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.